My brothers and sisters, there is a silent war taking place, not on the battlefield, not in politics, and not in the media, but in the realm of relationships. It's happening in your circle, at your dinner table, in your inbox. Yes, in your life. You might not see it, but it's there. It wears a smile, it nods in agreement, it laughs at your jokes. It calls itself friend, but behind the veil of connection it operates like a spirit. Crafty, cunning, and calculating. It's what I call the secret witch friend. Let me be clear, this is not about fairy tales, pointy hats, or broomsticks. This is about the spirit of manipulation, control, jealousy, and destruction hiding in human form. This is about people in your life who are assigned not to bless you but to block you, sent not to push you forward but to pull you down. Their weapon, deception, their disguise, friendship. Some people are not who they appear to be. Some relationships are not divinely orchestrated, they are demonically permitted. They show up not when you're weak but when you're rising, not when you're crying but when you're dreaming, because the enemy does not attack the broken. He attacks the becoming. Have you ever wondered why certain people cling to you when you start elevating? Why they seem helpful, loyal, even spiritual, yet things start to go wrong when they come close? That's not coincidence. That's coordination from a kingdom that wants to sabotage your assignment. Let me share something with you. The enemy does not fight where there is nothing to lose. If you feel under attack, it's not because you're cursed. It's because you're carrying something. And that's exactly why a witch doesn't come as a witch. She comes as a comforter, he comes as a mentor, they come as helpers to your destiny, but in truth they are assigned to monitor your movements, sabotage your growth, and delay your breakthrough. Their access becomes your downfall. But here's where it gets serious. Many people are praying for open doors while sleeping beside the person who's locking them. Many are fasting for favor while confiding in someone who is cursing them in silence. You don't need a spell when you have access to someone's heart. And that's what makes a witch friend so dangerous. It's not that they hate you. It's that they want to be you, and when they can't be you, they will break you. Some people will cheer for you as long as you're still dreaming, but the moment you start building, they grow quiet. They loved the idea of you becoming something. They just didn't think it would happen this fast. They were fine with your prayers, your potential, your plans, but not with your progress. Because the moment potential turns into real movement, the hidden hearts start to show. And I came to tell someone today, not everyone clapping is celebrating. Some are just making noise to cover their fear that you might actually rise. You see, it's easy to support a vision that isn't moving yet. People feel safe when you're stuck. They like you when you're dreaming because dreams don't intimidate them. You're harmless when you're talking, but start walking, and they get nervous. Why? Because movement makes demons manifest, because your progress is proof that purpose is real, and a secret witch friend, though they hate progress. They tolerate potential, but progress threatens their position in your life. Because once you move, you realize who is actually walking with you. The enemy is subtle. He doesn't always come with horns. Sometimes he comes in the form of your biggest supporter, who somehow always forgets to mention your wins. Have you noticed? When you were crying, they answered every call. When you were confused, they offered comfort. But now that you're advancing, elevating, stepping into your calling, you feel a strange silence from them. They say things like, "Don't forget where you came from," when they should be saying, "I'm proud of how far you've come." They'll tell you, "Don't let it get to your head," when they should be saying, "Keep going. You're just getting started." This is how they downplay your progress, not through insults, but through underwhelming support. They don't hate you, but they hate the speed of your success. They don't oppose your growth as long as it doesn't grow beyond them. And here's the truth. God is not just revealing your destiny. He's exposing who can't handle it. Because what's the point of building something great if you have to keep pretending to be small just to keep people comfortable? Let me go deeper. A witch doesn't always cast spells. Sometimes they just sow seeds of doubt. A secret witch friend won't tell you to stop. They'll just act like what you're doing isn't that important. You tell them you got a new opportunity. They say, "Oh, nice." You share the testimony of how God answered your prayer, and they say, "That's cool. That's not normal. That's not healthy. That's spiritual resistance." They're hoping you'll feel unsure so you'll slow down. They're hoping you'll need more approval, so they can control you with silence. But what they don't know is, when God has affirmed you, no one else's applause is necessary. When heaven has endorsed you, earth's opinions become background noise. You have to learn how to protect your progress from people who once cheered for your potential, because potential made you their project, but progress makes you powerful. And when you start walking in power, secret which friends get nervous, because they liked you when you were dependent. They liked you when you were unsure. They liked you when you needed their advice. But now you're thinking clearly. Now you're praying with fire. Now you're moving with boldness. Now you're setting boundaries. And suddenly you're too different, too busy, too spiritual. No, my friend, you're just no longer controlled. Understand this. God never told you to keep shrinking to stay connected. Sometimes elevation requires isolation. You won't lose real friends by growing, only fake ones. Only which friends, because anyone who loves you will celebrate your steps, not sabotage your stride. Anyone assigned to your destiny will fuel your fire, not fear your flame, so stop making excuses for their silence. Stop chasing people who can't clap. Stop lowering your volume to keep people around who were never meant to hear your full sound, and don't waste energy confronting them. You don't need to expose them. Just keep progressing. Your progress will be your proof. Your growth will be your warfare. Your consistency will frustrate their curses. And eventually the witch will expose themselves, not through words, but through withdrawal. They'll leave, and you won't need to beg them to stay, because when purpose increases, leeches fall off on their own. You were not made to hide your light to protect someone else's insecurity. You were not created to pause your purpose for someone else's ego. God called you to rise. He called you to build. He called you to walk out the thing that you were once afraid to say out loud. Don't go back to being potential when He's already made you progress. So bless them. Love them, but keep moving. Let them sit in silence. Let them watch in confusion. But don't stop walking, because this next season isn't about proving anything to anybody. It's about fulfilling everything God spoke over your life. And you don't need their validation. You have God's vision, so be bold, be clear, be free. Your only job now is to become what God saw before the world ever saw you. And anyone who can't handle that, let them go. Some people love you more when you're broken. They're quick to show up when you're bleeding. They send the texts. They say the prayers. They offer their shoulder. And while it seems like love, and often it feels like care, what you don't see in that moment is the invisible line that separates compassion from control. Because not everyone who supports your struggle wants you to survive it. There are people who find identity in your instability. They feel needed when you're needy. They feel strong when you're weak. But the moment you begin to rise, to heal, to shift into strength, they disappear. Where were they when you got the promotion? Where were they when God opened the door? Where were they when you finally launched what you were afraid to speak out loud? Silent, distant, suddenly busy. Because they were never committed to your wholeness, they were addicted to your woundedness. That is the posture of a secret witch friend. They don't wear darkness on their face. No, they wear empathy as a mask. And as long as you're down, they're your greatest ally. But elevation always exposes motivation. It's not just about them helping you cry. It's about how they react when you finally stop. When you stop venting and start building. When you stop asking for help and start moving in purpose, that's when the shift happens. That's when their tone changes. They get less warm, less engaged, less available, and they say it's just life. They say they've been busy, but truth doesn't hide. It leaves patterns, and the pattern is this. When you're down, they're close, but when you rise, they pull away, because pain was the place where they held power. And your progress is a threat to their position in your life. What they never tell you is that your healing makes them insecure, not because they don't love you, but because you growing exposes where they're still stuck. You becoming whole shines a light on where they're still fractured. and instead of being inspired by your growth, they feel overshadowed. So they retreat, quietly, emotionally, spiritually, they step back. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because they can't handle what you're becoming. That's the subtlety of the witch spirit. It doesn't just operate through cursing and control. It operates through emotional dependence. It needs to be needed. It thrives in codependence. And when you become stable, focused, clear, when you no longer look to them for comfort or clarity, that spirit begins to suffocate, because your independence means the end of their influence. Have you ever had a moment where you were hurting and they were right there? But then, when God lifted you out, you looked around and they were gone. You assumed they were a friend because they wept with you. But tears don't equal loyalty, and presence in pain doesn't always mean presence in purpose. Some people only walk with you as long as you're crawling, but the moment you start running, they feel left behind. And here's where you must mature. Stop confusing support in suffering with covenant. Real friends don't just visit your valley. They climb with you to the mountain. They celebrate when you get free. They clap when you get healed. They shout when you step into destiny. They don't shrink when you rise. They expand with you. But a witch friend, don't know. They stay in the valley not because they can't climb, but because they never wanted you to leave it. As long as you were broken, they felt like the hero. As long as you were unsure, they felt like the guide. But when you no longer need their advice, when you begin to hear God clearly, when you begin to trust the Spirit above their opinion, that's when the relationship hits a wall. Because they weren't connected to your calling, they were attached to your condition. Some people won't celebrate your breakthrough because it breaks their control. They saw themselves as the answer, and when you realized that God was the answer, they felt irrelevant. So they pulled back, not to protect you, but to preserve their pride. And that, my friend, is how you discern what they really were. It's painful, it's confusing, but it's also freeing. Because once you recognize it, you stop begging for support from places God has already disconnected. You stop asking for loyalty from people who were only licensed to be there for a season. Some were only assigned to your suffering, and when God healed you, that contract expired. Don't chase them, don't explain yourself. Don't dim your light to win their approval. Walk in your healing, walk in your wholeness, walk in your promotion. Because God didn't bring you through the fire so you could go back and sit in ashes just to keep someone else comfortable. You are not required to stay broken for someone to feel needed. You are not obligated to stay silent just to avoid offending their insecurity. The same God who comforted you in pain is calling you to walk boldly in promise. And the people who are meant to walk with you, they won't be intimidated by your healing. They'll be inspired by it. They won't just mourn with you. They'll rejoice with you. That's what real friendship looks like in the kingdom. So rise, heal, build, grow, and let those who are only loyal to your pain be exposed by your progress. Not every attack against your destiny comes like a storm. Some come as a whisper. Not every enemy screams in your face. Some smile when they shake your hand. And one of the most dangerous weapons the enemy uses is not a sword, but a question. Go all the way back to the beginning. The serpent didn't bite Eve, he didn't shout, he didn't strike, he asked, did God really say? That's it. Just a little question, a little seed of doubt planted in the soil of a spirit, and that's how everything unraveled, not through violence, but through subtle suggestion. That's exactly how a secret witch friend moves. They don't come with accusation, they come with concern, they don't confront you directly. They just suggest another angle, they sound helpful, they sound wise, but what they're really doing is undermining what God told you. Their tone is calm, their words are wrapped in care, but their motives are polluted by insecurity and envy, because they can't stop your calling, so instead they try to confuse it. Have you ever felt so sure of something, so full of faith, so lit up with fire, only for one conversation to make you question it all? You were ready to move, ready to launch, ready to obey, and then here comes that one voice. Are you sure that's what God said? And suddenly the fire flickers. The joy gets heavy, the clarity becomes fog. That wasn't just a question, that was warfare disguised as wisdom. The enemy loves to use familiar voices. He doesn't always use strangers. He'll speak through someone you love. Someone you respect, someone who knows your past, because when it comes from them it hits different. It feels trustworthy, and that's the trap, because not all doubt feels like doubt. Sometimes it feels like advice. Sometimes it feels like love, but love does not diminish your faith. Love doesn't cause you to second. Guess your God. Real love sharpens your faith. Real friends build your belief, but a witch friend? No, they don't tear down your dream, they poke holes in it. They say things like, I just don't want you to get disappointed, or I don't want you to miss God. It sounds spiritual, it sounds careful. But what they're really saying is, you believing like that makes me uncomfortable. Because your boldness reminds them of their bondage, your faith exposes their fear, so instead of rising with you, they try to reduce you. Not to protect you, but to control you, and if you're not spiritually alert, you'll think they're helping. You'll think their voice is wisdom, but deep down you'll feel the friction, you'll feel the confusion. That's your spirit picking up on something your mind hasn't labeled yet. It's not just what they said. It's what happened after they said it. You stopped moving. You stopped believing. You started analyzing what God already answered. And that's how you know that voice wasn't sent by heaven. This is why discernment is critical in this hour. You can't afford to entertain every suggestion, no matter how sweet the voice. Every voice in your life is either pulling you into your calling or out of it. There is no neutral, that are you sure, doesn't come from nowhere. It's a seed, and if you let it stay it will grow. One seed of doubt can delay years of purpose. One wrong voice can detour your assignment. Not because you weren't called, but because you stopped trusting the call. Here's the truth you need to hear. If God said it, that settles it. If God confirmed it in your spirit, that's your anchor. If God gave you the vision, it is not your job to shrink it down to someone else's level of belief. You are not responsible for making them comfortable with your call. You are responsible for protecting what heaven planted, because what starts as a whisper of concern can quickly become a storm of hesitation. And hesitation is how destinies are buried. Too many people have aborted their assignment not because of attack, but because of advice that wasn't aligned with God's voice. You must be ruthless when it comes to protecting your promise. Not harsh, not bitter, but clear, clear enough to say, I love you, but I trust God more than I trust your opinion. You don't owe anyone an explanation for obeying God. You don't need approval to walk in your anointing. Let them question, let them wonder, but you walk. You build, you move forward, because God doesn't repeat himself just to convince people who were never meant to hear what he told you in the first place. And if someone's voice keeps making you question what God confirmed, that's your sign they're not helping you, they're hindering you. Let the masks fall, let the spirits be exposed, because in this season clarity is not optional, it's survival. You can't afford to be swayed by clever words wrapped in subtle sabotage. You need bold faith, sharp discernment, and the courage to say, that's not what God said, and I won't let your doubt live in my spirit. So be vigilant. Be bold, be anchored, because the next time someone asks you, are you sure that's what God said? You won't flinch, you'll smile, lift your head, and say, I'm not just sure, I'm sent. Just because someone is speaking your language doesn't mean they carry your spirit. In this season, you must learn to discern the difference between those who are present and those who are planted. Some are in the room, but they're not rooted in your vision. They echo your phrases. They repeat your declarations. They say, Amen, yes, Lord, and I'm with you, but underneath the surface there is no alignment. They are mimicking, not partnering, copying, not carrying. They have your words in their mouth, but not your burden in their heart. You know what makes this dangerous? It looks like unity. It sounds like support. It feels like agreement. But agreement in the flesh is not the same as alignment in the spirit. Anybody can say that's powerful. Anybody can repost your vision. But when the warfare starts, when the price of obedience shows up, when sacrifice is required, these same people are nowhere to be found. Why? Because they never had the oil. They just wore the outfit. People can speak your vocabulary and still not share your values. They can nod in church and still doubt you in private. They can be fluent in faith talk, but bankrupt in faith walk. And in this hour, God is separating the sound from the source. Just because it sounds like support doesn't mean it came from a pure place. Some people are parroting your words only to monitor your progress. They say amen in public but murmur in secret. They cheer for you around you but compete with you when you're not looking. That's not covenant. That's camouflage. This is the counterfeit agreement that weakens the church empty amens. No weight, no sacrifice, no intercession, just noise. You don't need people repeating your revelation. You need people who will wrestle with you in the Spirit. You need people who know how to labor in prayer, not just clap during preaching. You need people who don't just echo the sound of your purpose, but protect the sound of your assignment. And if someone's spirit doesn't match their mouth, then their yes is meaningless. The enemy doesn't always come with resistance. Sometimes he comes through imitation. He puts people in your life who seem like they carry your fire, but they're really just watching the flame. They mirror your passion. They reflect your language, but when the pressure hits, they fold. They start saying things like, maybe it's not the season, or let's wait a little longer. That's when the truth comes out, because mimicry can only go so far. It can't survive the cost. You have to understand language can be learned. Spirit cannot. Someone can sit next to you, listen to your prayers, quote your declarations, sing your songs, and still be completely disconnected from your mantle. This is how people slip into your circle, and you don't catch it until you're drained. You assumed agreement, but you didn't test alignment. You thought you had a partner, but you had a parrot. There's a reason Jesus didn't just look for belief. He looked for fruit. You will know them by their fruit. Not their phrases, not their church talk, not their shout, fruit, evidence, action, because partnership in the kingdom is more than talk, it's obedience. It's walking when it's hard. It's staying when it's uncomfortable. It's covering when you're under attack. That's what covenant looks like. Ask yourself, who has repeated your vision but never invested in it? Who says they're with you, but never shows up when you need help carrying the weight? Who claps for your announcements but disappears in your assignments? That's not partnership. That's performance. And performances don't birth purpose. They drain it. You must stop assuming that everyone who echoes your declarations shares your revelation. The difference is revealed in the fire, when God starts turning up the heat, when you step deeper into obedience and things get uncomfortable. The parrots flee, but real partners lean in. Real covenant doesn't flinch under pressure. It doesn't just repeat your passion. It bears your burden. That's why in this hour you must ask for discernment over dialogue. You don't need more people to say amen. You need people who will fast when you're fighting. You need people who will war with you in private, not just clap for you in public. You need people whose spirit leaps when yours speaks, not because you're impressive, but because they're assigned. And when it's from God, you won't have to force it. It will be confirmed in the Spirit. So yes, they may speak your language, but if they don't carry your oil, don't trust the echo. Guard your spirit. Protect your assignment. Stop letting empty amens deceive you into thinking you're surrounded by agreement. Because the next level doesn't need echoes, it needs intercessors, it doesn't need mimics, it needs midwives, and if it takes you walking alone for a season to see who is real, walk anyway. Because it's better to walk with one aligned spirit than a crowd full of empty mouths. There's a silence that speaks louder than words. It creeps in slowly, not with confrontation, not with anger, but with withdrawal. The warmth that used to be there starts to feel cold. The excitement that once met your every breakthrough suddenly disappears. They used to celebrate every step of your journey, but now your progress is met with silence, delayed responses, and dry congratulations. You haven't changed your heart, your voice, or your posture, but they have. The truth, they're not mad at you, they're just uncomfortable with your growth. It's a quiet resentment, a subtle jealousy that refuses to say its name. You try to shake it off. You tell yourself maybe they're just busy, or they're probably going through something. But deep down in your spirit, you know better. Discernment always catches what people try to hide. Your spirit notices what your mind tries to excuse, and the shift you feel is real. They're not clapping anymore. because your elevation exposed something in them they were trying to keep buried. Some people loved you as long as you were on their level, as long as you needed their advice, as long as you leaned on their wisdom. But when God started answering your prayers, when He started lifting you, when your language became more confident, when your vision started to manifest, they didn't know how to handle it, because your rise reminded them of their stall. Your movement highlighted their stagnancy, and instead of letting it inspire them, they let it offend them. Jealousy doesn't always look like slander. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like that friend who used to check in every day, and now they've disappeared. That cousin who supported every post, and now they don't even react. That church friend who prayed with you, and now they barely speak, but nothing happened. There was no fight. No fallout, just a shift, and you've been trying to understand why. Here it is. They liked you better before you started becoming, because your glow made them feel dim. Your movement forced them to confront their own delay. Your freedom reminded them of the chains they stopped trying to break. They were fine when you were doubting. They loved you when you were still second, guessing your voice. But now that you're walking in purpose, now that your identity is solid, now that your prayers are bolder and your confidence is rooted in God, not ego, but God, they don't know where they fit anymore. And the worst part, they still smile, they still say, "I'm proud of you," but it's empty. You feel the hollowness in their words. You feel the absence in their presence. The energy is no longer genuine. Because inside they're wrestling with the lie that your win means their loss. They don't understand that there's room at the top, that God is not scarce, that your blessing doesn't rob them of theirs. But a spirit that's insecure will always interpret someone else's elevation as a threat. This is why you have to be mature in this season. Don't retaliate. Don't argue. Don't try to convince them to clap. Just keep building, keep walking, keep obeying, because your destiny can't be delayed just to protect someone else's comfort. You cannot shrink to keep fragile friendships intact. You cannot water down your win to avoid making them feel small. Because you didn't steal this, you sowed for this, you prayed, you fasted, you went through the midnight hours, you didn't skip steps. You endured them, and now God is honoring you. Don't apologize for that. Don't you dare hide it. You don't have to brag, but you do have to be bold. You owe it to the version of you that didn't quit. You owe it to the people God's called you to reach, and most of all, you owe it to the one who brought you out of pits and into purpose. He didn't bring you this far just for you to downplay His glory, and for those whose love shifts with your level. Bless them, release them, and move forward, because the real ones, the ones who are for you, they don't get quieter when you rise, they get louder. They don't feel threatened by your growth. They feel included in it. They see your win as a win for the kingdom. They're not keeping score. They're lifting hands. They don't stop clapping just because the spotlight moves, because real friends don't need the stage. They celebrate from the shadows. So don't be discouraged by the shift. Don't question your growth. Don't let their silence rob you of your joy. The people who are called to your life won't be silenced by your success. They'll be ignited by it. And if someone's loyalty can't survive your elevation, then it was never loyalty to begin with. It was convenience. It was comfort. It was codependency dressed up as covenant. But God is refining your circle. He's exposing hearts. And He's showing you not everyone who started with you can handle where you're going. And that's okay, because your next level doesn't require approval. It requires obedience. So walk with grace, speak with love, but don't stop moving, don't stop winning, don't stop growing, because you were never called to stay small for someone else's security. Keep rising. The right ones will rise with you. The most dangerous spirits are not the ones you can see. They're not always loud. They don't come in rebellion. Some of them come in relationship. They don't throw stones. They shake hands. They don't fight you. They follow you, not because they believe in you, but because your light gives them cover, because your favor opens doors, because your anointing gives them access they could never unlock on their own. And so they don't attack. They attach, and the problem is they look like friends. They sound like support. They ride in your car, sit at your table, stand in your photos, but they were never sent by God. They were assigned by the enemy to slow you down, to drain your oil, to delay your journey, not by harming you, but by hitching a ride. You think you're helping them grow. You think you're covering them. You're praying with them, you're pouring into them, but they're not receiving, they're absorbing. You're giving, they're draining. You're building, they're benefiting. And all the while your momentum is slowing and you can't explain why. Your fire is dimming and you don't know what's changed. Your clarity is blurring and you feel like something's off. Here's why. You're carrying someone God never told you to carry. Because when you are anointed, your presence creates access. When you're called, just being near you can open favor over someone else's life. But if you're not discerning, you'll confuse proximity with partnership. You'll assume that because they're close, they're connected. But Judas was close too. Judas sat at the table, Judas dipped in the same bowl. Judas kissed Jesus on the cheek, and he wasn't a threat because he was an outsider. He was a threat because he was an insider. And that's how the enemy works. He doesn't always come to destroy you, sometimes he comes to use you. You have to ask yourself, who is riding with me that was never supposed to be on this road? Who keeps showing up in my space, but doesn't feed my spirit? Who's taking from my oil but never fills my cup? You think you're being loyal, you think you're being loving, but really you're being used, not because you're weak, but because you're too pure. Harder to believe someone would attach to you with no intention of growing. But it happens, not everyone attached to you is called to you, and not everyone who benefits from your grace deserves access to your life. Some people survive through proximity. They feed off your prayers. They copy your language, they borrow your strength, and when things go wrong in their life, you feel it in your spirit. You get attacked for storms that aren't even yours. Why? Because you've let a passenger carry a weight in your boat that God never told you to allow. And here's the trap. They keep you just drained enough to lose focus, but not broken enough to walk away. They keep you emotionally tangled. They guilt you with loyalty. They remind you of how far you've come together. But history is not the same as destiny. Just because someone has been there doesn't mean they belong there. And just because they love you doesn't mean they honor your assignment. It's time to be honest. They don't want you. They want what being near you gives them. The influence, the safety, the spiritual cover, the access to rooms. And as long as you keep mistaking their presence for purpose, you'll stay stuck wondering why you're heavy all the time. Because they're not attacking you. They're riding you. There are people who haven't prayed in months, but are still walking in blessing, because they're standing next to someone who prays daily. People with no vision moving forward, because they're clinging to someone who hears God. But eventually, the weight of carrying people you were never assigned to will show up in your health, your peace, your clarity, and your timing. Because delayed obedience isn't just sin, it's expensive. Every minute you spend trying to pull someone who refuses to walk is a moment you could have spent building what God actually called you to do. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to expose them. You don't have to make a scene. But you do need to release them, quietly, clearly, with conviction. Because if you don't, you'll keep mistaking warfare for intercession. You'll keep praying about a burden that's not even yours. You'll keep pouring out to someone who was only supposed to receive once, not live off you forever. Stop trying to save people God is trying to separate from you. Stop dragging people into rooms they have no grace to occupy. Stop confusing compassion with compromise. Love has boundaries, purpose has protocol, and the longer you tolerate the wrong attachments, the more you jeopardize your own assignment. Close doesn't mean cold. Proximity isn't proof. Judas was close, but never aligned. Lot was family, but never covenant. And the crowds followed Jesus everywhere, but only a few were called disciples. You are not responsible for carrying everyone. You are responsible for carrying the call, and in this season God is revealing leeches. He is breaking soul ties. He is confronting emotional covenants that looked like friendship, but were rooted in fear and dependency. Because where you're going, only the called can come. Let go, travel light, and move with discernment. So what do we do with all this? What do we do when the ones who walk beside us are secretly working against us? What do we do when the voices that shout, men, are hollow, when the hugs come with hidden daggers? when the same people who smile in public are sowing confusion in private. We discern, and then we decide. We don't walk in fear, we walk in wisdom. We don't harbor bitterness, we sharpen our vision, because not every storm is outside of us. Some are sleeping in the boat, and the days of ignoring the weight we're not called to carry are over. The hour is too late, the calling is too urgent, the price is too high, and the room for fake alignment, counterfeit support, and hidden witchcraft disguised as friendship. That space has expired. This is a season of divine separation. A season where God is silencing background noise so you can hear him. He's removing parasites disguised as people. He's untangling your soul from those who were never assigned to your purpose. He's showing you the truth, not to break your heart, but to protect your destiny. Let the veil lift, let every secret witch be exposed, not through anger, not through vengeance, but through revelation. Let your discernment grow sharper, let your spirit stay clean, and as God begins to shift your circle, don't resist it. Don't try to hold on to what God is clearly cutting off. Mourn if you must, cry if you need to, but move on, because the oil on your life is too precious, the call is too sacred, the vision is too large, and your next level doesn't have room for silent assassins smiling in your shadow. You're not paranoid, you're prophetic. You're not bitter, you're awakened. And when you finally let go of what was secretly draining you, you will feel heaven breathe on you again. The counterfeit is being exposed, the remnant is rising, and your table, it's being set. In front of every witch who thought your light would burn out, let it burn brighter.